And hello, everybody, on this lovely Sunday.
Oliver.
And so today we're going to welcome Father Seán Sheehy. Father Seán Sheehy is the spiritual director now of Christian TV Ireland. He's here to guide us on our future path. Um, you're very welcome, Father Sheehy.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be with you.
Thank you very much, also. And of course, this was John Malone's idea, and it was a fantastic idea to have you to give us some spiritual guidance in areas where we probably aren't too attuned to. So anyway, today we're going to talk about something very, very, very important. It's resting on the Sabbath. Um, I was reading Georg Simmel, in which he describes how people cope in cities and modern life by becoming emotionally numb. We can somewhat counteract this by restoring the Sabbath day to what it once was. And so my first question is to Father Seán Sheehy. Father, from a Christian perspective, what is Sunday meant to be, and what do we lose when it becomes just another shopping day?
Well, as a Catholic priest, of course, I believe what the Catholic Church teaches. The Catholic Church, of course, teaches the importance of obeying the third commandment, which is to keep the Sabbath holy. And keeping the Sabbath holy means to begin the week by spending time with God and spending time with family to renew ourselves from the previous week, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, socially, morally, and physically. So the Sabbath is essential for the health of human beings, because without the Sabbath, without uh, getting away from the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and from the world of work, the world of pressure, the world of rushing, we just fall into the trap that your friend Mr. Simmel spoke about, and try to protect ourselves through isolation, and that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And from
Okay.
a reasonable standpoint, if God said that it's essential to have a day of rest after 6 days of work, then if he said that, it's because it's essential for us. And the
Absolutely.
more we ignore that, the more we do so at our own peril.
Okay. I just want to ask John, growing up in Ireland, do you remember Sundays feeling different from other days? Could you describe it to me and myself and
Well,
Father
well,
Sean?
Sunday was certainly different, and not just Sunday, Saturday. Saturday was a day that you went to confession every week, and you polished your shoes. You had to polish your shoes for Sunday, and you put on your best bib and tucker, your suit, and you always wore a tie. And there was three masses in our local church in Boyle, Monastery in Abuja, place of the monastery. And so we went to 10 o'clock mass and it would be packed, the same as every mass. Maybe half eight in the morning mightn't be that packed, but people went to that. And we had a sergeant living beside us. My father was a guard, was a sergeant. And he went to three masses on a Sunday and he went to mass every week. Whether that was the way he was doing when we were in Boyle. So he was a very holy religious man. So that's the way it was. And everybody was doing that, and the people I mixed with was going to mass every Sunday and confession every Saturday.
Okay. So, Father Sean, you mentioned there that Sunday is the Lord's Day, it's a day of rest, but how does the constant commercial activity undermine that spiritually and socially? We can see that like shops and shopping centers are open on Sundays and it's all about consumerism. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, again, it totally undermines, as I said, the health of the individual. And the goal of the world, I mean, let's face it, we have two kingdoms. We have the kingdom of God and we have the kingdom of Satan. And the kingdom of Satan's goal is to eliminate the kingdom of God. Now, the kingdom of Satan is all about man trying to be God, man trying to be independent of God. And the whole consumer approach is an attempt in that direction. So where man thinks that he can take care of himself, where man thinks that he can operate without and deal with the creation without spending any time with the Creator, and he finds out, as I say, to his own peril, that doesn't work. So when Sunday becomes the same as Monday, then there's no time for the individual to take time out. And it's essential to take time out in order to recoup one's energy mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, and so on. Also, the commercial world undermines the importance of the social life of the human person, especially the family life of the human person. And so families suffer because the father and the mother both have to go to work on a Sunday. And there's really no other day that they can take off because the other days are quote unquote work days. So human beings actually are being deprived of what they need in order to have a sense of joy and living because of the dominance of the world of work, the world of commercialism, the world of consumerism. I feel so sorry, for those who have to go to work on Sundays because they have to deprive themselves of their families. There's no time for them to get away from all of that and to just be, because the commercial world is all about doing, and yet the whole idea of being is ignored. And the fact is, we have to focus on our being before we can do anything. And that's why people are so unhappy today. That's why they're so stressed.
I just want to move
because
over.
of the fact they have not taken any time out. They have no time actually to recollect. We all need to take time to recollect ourselves and ask ourselves, where am I anyway? Where am I going? What am I doing? And what is it all about? And ultimately, what are my priorities?
Absolutely. So a kind of a reflection also, I suppose. So John, how do you feel now about Sundays? Like you're retired, does it feel like a day of rest to you when you're out and about? I know when you're at home, feel like a day of rest, but when you're out and about, what do you think of a Sunday nowadays? I mean, compared to what it was, say?
Well. Sunday is, as far as I'm concerned, the same as usual. I go to mass. Well, often individual mass on Saturday because that was introduced, and sometimes it suits. But this morning I didn't go. I went to mass in Kells, St. Column Kills, because they have a choir there, and there isn't a choir in the local church. And though somebody said there's somebody after starting and the organist, we had no organist, so I went to St. Column Kills, and I was hoping to hear Silent Night. They sang some Christmas song that I'm not that familiar with, but they didn't sing Silent Night. And one of the things the priest that said mass is the parish priest, and he's not very, what's the word? He doesn't hasn't got conviction in his tone, and he left out the credo, the I believe in God, the Nicene credo, and I was surprised because it's mandatory as far as I'm concerned, and the fact that the mass has changed with the priest instead of facing the tabernacle, he's gawking at you, and we're all looking up at the altar, and then I noticed that the tabernacle now is on the left hand side. It's not behind it was behind the altar when it was up at the top, but it was moved down. And the altar, the tabernacle is there. And instead of the priest doing it and all the rest of it, as our parish priest at least does that, the lay people are opening the tabernacle and bringing the thing down, and that's not apparently right. So the fact that the mass changed from what I was brought up with, and for years in the Latin rite, I still go to mass. But it's not hasn't got the reverence, it hasn't got the sacrament of confession the way it was. It's not even preached. And so if you don't preach something and let people know, well, then people then do their own thing. And they go to mass now and again or whatever it is. When the children make their first Holy Communion and confirmation, that's the last you see of them. Now I just show you. There's when I made my first communion, a little fella in Hope,
Very good.
and then here's when we were in Boyle. There's where we made a confirmation, and my father is there, my mother, my grandfather, and my two little brothers, and me. And so these were all very important, and photographs was taken, and there was no such thing as not going to mass. When you made the first Holy Communion, you went to mass, and you were able to receive Holy Communion kneeling at the altar rail. So the changes that have come about, I mean, I still practice my Catholic faith, full stop. But the sacrament of confession is not available the way it was. I have to go elsewhere to get it
Okay.
because it's not available.
So
It used to be held on a Saturday. So these are the things, the changes that are not good in my book.
it sounds like you're saying, John, that there's a lack of reverence in the church, so people were seeking maybe reverence elsewhere or satisfaction elsewhere. That's what it sounds like
Correct
you're
and
saying.
right. They're
Yeah,
not going, that's for
yeah,
sure. When you make too many changes, the effect is lapsed Catholics and their souls in grave danger of eternal damnation. If you don't go to Mass as a Catholic when you've been baptized to make a First Holy Communion confirmation, you don't do that. Your soul is in grave danger of eternal damnation. That's the way it was preached. It's not preached now. The bishops have taken a vow of silence. They're saying nothing, only administrating or wherever they're at. And so they have a responsibility that they're not exercising. And the sacrament of confession is want to be preached morning, noon, and night and be held, and people encouraged to avail of the sacrament of confession.
and of
There's
course
no vocation to the holy
we
priesthood.
will.
And only for foreigners that's come here, we wouldn't have masses in many churches.
We will be covering a few of those issues there that you said as we go through the questions. I just want to move back to Father Seán for a second. So Ireland used to slow down together on a Sundays. I do remember Sundays myself as a child when there was a kind of a shared rhythm in family life. We went to each other's homes on a Sunday, and if you called to somebody's house, you could actually walk in the back door without knocking in County Kerry. I do recall this with my father, and that he'd have 6 or 7 children behind him because we have a big family. Um, how do you see changes in that area, the rhythm of life in regard to this numbness we're talking about, this commercialism, Father? Can you recall times in your own life when families when visited each other, say on a Sunday?
Well, of course, absolutely. I remember on Sundays, for example, we would go visit our grandmother. My mother's mother, my father's mother was dead. We would visit the grandmother and so on. But there was a relaxation. Sunday was a day to relax. As I said, it was a day to get in touch with the Creator through the Holy Mass, and it was a day to get in touch with the family. And I think what has happened actually is that the family has been undermined to a large extent through again the commercialism and through consumerism. Because when a mother or father can't be with the family at least one day a week, and in a relaxed manner, then there's going to be very little quality time that they will actually spend together. Same thing is true with time with the Lord. In every Mass, for example, in the preface, the priest always says, "It is truly right and just, our duty and our salvation, always and everywhere to give thanks to the Lord." So we have a duty to God, to thank Him for His blessings. We have a duty to our family to be with them. And when we don't observe those duties, then we're actually being untrue to ourselves, and we will suffer the consequences. I also think too that people were more open with each other. They had a sense of friendliness. They had a bit of banter between them, and then of course the other thing that has happened, I think, drastically, that has undermined family life in Ireland in many ways, besides consumerism, is sports. when I was growing up, for example, there were no games till after dinner, till the afternoon on a Sunday, and so that morning day was sacred, and so it was Saturday. There was nothing on Saturday. It was a sacred day. It was like a preparation day for the Sunday. That was all taken away. When I came back to Ireland, for example, a number of years ago, I couldn't believe what had happened because I left Ireland in the early 60s. And the Ireland that I left, which was an Ireland that time, where, as John was saying, that people worship God. I think it was 98% of Catholics participated in the Mass. Now, that didn't mean that everybody, was a saint, but at least they had that sense of obligation to the Lord. And also, it was a time for family to be together. They didn't have to run here or run there or whatever it is. The other thing that has happened, I think, as well, is that today people are running away from themselves, and when we're in God's presence, we can't run away from ourselves. When we're in our family's presence, we can't run away from ourselves. And so why are people running away from themselves? Because they don't really want to face themselves. They don't quite know who they are, what their purpose is, why they're here, or what they're doing. They're just kind of existing from day to day. There's no joy in living. There's no real sense. I've always said, the best is always ahead. The future is always bright, no matter what's happening to us. But that seems to be gone today. And I think the reason it's gone is because precisely people have lost contact with the Creator, because only the Creator can explain to the creature what it's all about, what its purpose is, what its power is, what its meaning is all about, and so on and so forth. And so the more people move away from God, and the world of work, the commercialism gives them an excuse to do that, then the more they become lost. And when you're lost, then, you either admit that you're lost or you don't. I think many people today are lost, but they won't admit they're lost, because if they admitted they're lost, they'd have to recognize they'd have to change their ways. And they'd have to follow someone who is going somewhere and would lead them to a sense of joy, a sense of happiness, a sense of well-being, a sense of, life is really worth living. That seems to be missing today. And I think the reason it's missing is precisely because Sunday has been relegated to just another day of work, another day of pressure, another day of away from the family and away from God.
Okay,
and I think that always takes its toll.
I just want to go back to John for a second. So, John, do you think that working on Sundays has changed family life or community life? For example, did you have to work on Sundays when you were in your working years?
No, I never worked on Sunday, and yet I was in work and was in the sales end of it and traveling the country and all the rest of it. But quite frankly, when the foundation is there, that the way it was with churches packed and all my friends going, I didn't have friends that were weak in that area. Even today, my friends are ones that go to mass and practice the Catholic faith. They sort of see the way it has deteriorated with the changes that's been made. You can't change everything the way the world changed, and for the worse. And really, I think the business of practicing a Catholic faith, it's more difficult probably for some now, because the way it was organised with the 3 or 4 priests and the missions in every church once a year. Now I'm here 24 years, and there's only been one mission with lay missioners, and that's disgraceful. You have to nourish. You have to nourish plants. You have to nourish the faith, and if it's not being preached and preached properly and with conviction, and the sacrament of confession being available and preached, they're not doing any of these things, and so therefore people are going astray. God help them, and they have no purpose. in life. You can see it. They haven't got that peace that you have when you practice your Catholic faith. You have that peace. And I'm long enough in the tooth and have travelled here, there, and yonder, and I can see the way things have gone. And they've gone down the tube as far as I'm concerned. And I hope this new Pope, he's calling the bishops, I hope he wakes up from whatever slumber they're under and get things going the way they go back to the drawing board and have things the way they were and have the sacrament of confession available in every Catholic church. It's disgraceful to see that it's not available. How can you nourish something if it's not being nurtured?
I just want to go back to Father Sheehy there and ask him about the what we should have and what we've had in the past, which is the guaranteed day of rest. So, Father, how does commercialization of Sunday affect workers, do you think, who no longer have that guaranteed day of rest? This is they're on
Well,
this
I know.
constant.
Yeah. I mean, I think it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on them, and I think to some degree the commercial world is using them for its own ends. It's it's not really looking out for the person, because the commercial world is not family friendly, is not religion friendly. The commercial world is greedy. The commercial world is profit based. And the commercial world looks at human beings as means to an end, not as ends in themselves. And so people actually are pawns in many ways. They're just being used, and I think they feel used oftentimes. I mean, I think it's horrible, for example, to see people, especially like women, who have to work on Christmas Eve and then and working up until 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening if they're lucky, and then try to go home and try to create a Christmas atmosphere and whatnot. That to me, first of all, puts a tremendous amount of pressure on them. Also, it deprives them of the time they really want to spend with their family, and that they need to spend with their family. So. And here is where the leadership of the church, see, this is where the leadership of the church has become so weak. When I was growing up, the leadership of the church was very strong. And all the bishops and the priests, they all sang out of the same hymn sheet, and so did Rome. And now, one bishop says this, one priest says that, and whatnot. So there is actually division, there is confusion. And now people feel like they're on their own. And I mean, I think it's horrible, for example, for people to have to work on Sundays. So I was talking to a man in Tralee, and he had a shop, and he was telling me that he was mulling over closing the shop on Sunday. And then some member said, well, you lose this much money, especially, during the Rose of Tralee or some of those festivals or whatever it is. Anyway, he said, look, he said, it really got to me, he said, and I closed, he said, and he said, he said, I actually made more money, he said, by closing my shop on Sunday than I did when it was open.
Wow.
And it goes to show, God always rewards those who are faithful to him. And in closing his shop, he was also thinking about the people that were working for him as well, and the fact that they had families and need to be there. And so, of course, the commercial world, because the commercial world is not family friendly, is not religion friendly, then actually it dulls the human person. It dulls the soul, because it prevents the person from nourishing their souls. It dulls the people's social life. It dulls, as I said, it undermines family life. And it actually has a dehumanized effect on people. You saw that, for example, with communism. In the communist countries, where all the focus was on work, and they eliminated religion. You saw the state of the people. They detached. They were no longer interested in anything. They were just like pawns, allowing themselves to move. There was no creativity. There was no enthusiasm. And that's what happens. And that's what the world of work does. I see, for example, was it in Hungary or one of those countries where they actually closed? I think it's Spain, or somebody, was it John, that was saying that in Spain and France, even on Sundays, the businesses were closed. But Ireland is a pathetic little country. Ireland is, whenever it comes to being anti-Christian, Ireland seems to be the worst. And it is today. It is so pagan today in this country, which is a huge difference from the time I was growing up. And also the other thing is that the leadership of the church was never as weak as it is today. Because like John was saying, I remember listening to missioners in Listowel, and they came and they told shopkeepers, if you open on Sunday, and I never forget, the words they used to use, if you open on Sunday, the grass will grow where your shop is. And people, I tell you what, they didn't open. Now, some of them did on the slide, but the majority of them didn't. They kept it closed. Did they lose out? Of course not. Of course not. Whenever we do something for the Lord, we never lose out because he rewards us 100-fold. So I would say that a lot of the power of the industrial world, the consumer world, is due to a lack of strong leadership in the church, because the church is the countercultural voice, focusing on enhancing the humanity of every human being, of every person. And there's no other voice that does that. And when the leadership of the church mutes the voice of the church in terms of enhancing human life, then every human being suffers. And what happens? Satan's kingdom takes over. And as I said, Satan's kingdom is all about convincing human beings that they're their own gods, they can take care of themselves, and so on. So how are they taking care of themselves? By what that man that you're reading, Mr. Simmel, said, by isolating, by detaching, by disengaging, which of course is totally contrary to humanity, totally contrary to anthropology and who man is and what man is about.
And I suppose that they look, when you say disengaging, they're disengaging in one way, but they're engaging probably in commercialism to satisfy this need, this lack of reverence that John was talking about earlier. John, I want to ask you, okay, so you were lucky and fortunate that you didn't have to work on Sundays, but when you were working, was there other people that you knew that had to work on a Sunday? Can you recall anybody that had to work on the Sunday when you were in your
Well,
working
the only ones that had to work would be Gardaí, and my father was a Garda, so he might have to work on a Sunday, but not walking, going about the street, because there was nobody out on a Sunday that much. But and the pubs had short hours. They weren't open all day on Sunday the way they are now. The whole emphasis has been on the commercial end of it, and I'm all about the obligation and the Sunday and the white Sabbath and the day of rest, as God the Father said the seventh day rest. In other words, prayer and rest, and that nourishes the soul and has you in good humour. Whistling, you're as happy as Larry. The other way, you're stressed. You're like Stressed Eddie. There used to be a cartoon one time, Stressed Eddie, and it was so typical of nowadays. This fellow going around, stressed Eddie, it was called, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because it was symptomatic of what was
Very
going
good.
on. You can check out of these things. You don't, and I wouldn't work on a Sunday for man or anybody, and give them the two thumbs up if they come out with that kind of codology. There'd be no question of it, and I never had to do it. But nurses sometimes have to work, and certain people like that that are doing good. But the lack of emphasis on the practice of the Catholic faith is diabolical, because the sacrament of confession is not available the way it was. The altar rails, people not kneeling at, I kneel at the altar rails when they're there. We have them in Oldcastle, but it was in St. Columkills, and there's no altar rails there now, and they're standing about, but they're out like a monkey. I get it on the tongue, and I remember one place I was in, and the priest says, "No, put out your hand." And I think it was a priest in Virginia, in County Cavan, and I wouldn't like to be in his parish with that attitude. There's too many. There's not enough. What would I call it? Preaching the good news by the bishops, and by missions in every once a year in every church as was, and they put the spurt on you. Churches was packed. There was and then there was men's and women's sodalities, rose and benediction. All of them was done away with. So this is the result. A lot of people's souls in grave danger of eternal damnation, not practicing their Catholic faith. And the ones then that never practice anything, they want to realise that their time is up and eternity is going to be the most important journey they'll ever be on. And quite frankly, that message want to come out loud and clear. And the Christian TV Ireland will be drumming that home, and we'd have our rosary and benediction, and we'd have our men's and women's sodalities and stuff like that. So as to be so as to be an example, and lapsed Catholics might start coming back. The message is not going out there. If you don't preach the message, how are they going to know what to do?
Exactly, John. So, Father Seán, you spoke there about the loss of Sunday rest, burnout, anxiety, emotional numbness in modern life. I suppose really what can be done, because people are detached, they're seeking comfort in shopping centres. What would be the advice that you could give as a priest, maybe to the church, to the community, to the government? Can you think of things?
I think, first of all, that the bishops and the priests, without God. Somebody said one time that if God is not in the first place in your life, then everything else in your life is in the wrong place. And I do think today that in Ireland, that the bishops and the priests need to realize that church-wise, they're not living 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago. They're living in a completely different culture, completely different environment. When I was growing up, the parish was a community. There was a community spirit. And actually, the GAA took advantage of that community spirit as well for its support. And the church supported that. But now the parish is no longer a community. People do not even know, for the most part, who their next door neighbor is. There's no interaction. I mean, I worked in a missionary church where the church was the center for Catholics. And there was a real sense of community, and community was celebrated. And the task of the priest was to form community, to call people into community, and to enable people to share their gifts with one another. The priests in Ireland think that all they have to do is come out of the sacristy into the sanctuary and expect the people to be there. That was the way it was when I was growing up. That's not the way it is today. So the priest needs to go out and knock on doors, beat the bushes, so to speak, invite the people in, not just to invite them in, but to embrace the Lord, to become part of the parish. And the parishes need to celebrate themselves as Christian communities as well, so that the people might have a sense of belonging. Because one of the biggest psychological problems today is a feeling of anonymity, like you said in your summary, a feeling of isolation, a feeling that nobody cares. The last census in Ireland, 1 out of every 10 said they had no friends. Now, here's a country that was known as the
Wow.
Island of Saints and Scholars, a country that was noted for its wealth, Ireland of the Welcomes, and so on and so forth. So this is what Ireland has become. And so the bishops and the priests need to realize what Ireland has become and why Ireland, as it is today, needs the church leaders to form community that no longer exists and that they can no longer take for granted. And I think the day they do that is the day that, again, the commercial war will be challenged, the industrial war will be challenged, and people will once again stand up for themselves because they will have a new identity. and they will also have a new sense of appreciation for who they are, what they are, and what they need. And especially what they need more than anything else is they need God and they need family. Without God, without family, human beings become cogs in a wheel. And when a cog is broken, then maybe it's replaced with another cog, or maybe the whole wheel is thrown away. And so we have a throwaway culture. And we see that in abortion, for example. It's a throwaway culture. We see it in the movement toward so-called assisted suicide, a throwaway culture. Now, we're not talking about throwing away things. We're talking about throwing away people. People. And that shows how sick, how soulless, and how godless our society has become. And that's where it has to begin. Industry won't do a thing to change its approach. So if the church teaches this, but like John said, if the teaching is not taught and preached, then nobody hears. And all people then will hear is the other side of the other side, which is, oh, we judge you now on the basis of your performance. If you don't perform now, you're no use to us. See? And instead of you're a person, you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. You're irreplaceable, and so on. Only Christianity actually can bring about that change. And that's why Jesus was so urgent with his apostles when he said, go forth, teach all nations, teach them to observe everything that I have commanded you to do. Not teach them your opinions, but teach them everything that I have commanded you to do. And what he commanded to do was love God with all you have, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the secret.
I want to give Father Sheehy, I just want to give John the last word there because we've only got a minute and 20 seconds left on this, okay? So, John, you've attracted a lot of people to God through Christian TV Ireland, and the best way you can. You have a lot of people going by the analytics between the age of 45 and 55, so you're bringing them in. What's the message you'd have to people who feel this numbness, this isolation, and you've 1 minute to explain?
Well, the first thing you do, you speak with conviction, and you do it in a simple, easy to understand manner. You have your prayer time in the morning, and so on and so forth, and you're reading a bit of the Bible. And I started off with the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, only doing a paragraph, and now I'm on the Colossians, and I'm nearly St. Paul's letter to nearly finished at that. So when you do that and sing your hymns, I sing Silent Night now from December. And funny enough, when I was in the church there at Mass this morning, there was no such sign of Silent Night, and I think that's disgraceful. Quite frankly, show reverence and show the whole lot, and stop.
We're going to have to leave it there, folks, because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So listen, thank you both very, very much. This was a very interesting